Hello and welcome to episode 12 of Genre Blender, the podcast that celebrates all things storytelling. My name is Kris.
And I'm Ryan, and I'm a little sick today, so do apologize for my sniffling and croaky voice. But I am really hyped for today's topic, which is basically just us nerding out for the new year, talking about our yearly themes and goals, and for us personally and for the podcast as well.
It's always such an interesting time, that time period between Christmas and New Year, right? Where time just ceases to matter. The dates, there are no dates anymore. You wake up, you have no idea where you are, but suddenly it's a new year and you're full of hope again.
Yeah,
I don't know what it is, but
yeah.
every year it's the same thing.
Everything starts again.
One of my
Fresh start.
one of my favorite things is I went to the gym on New Year's Day, dead.
Oh,
Zero,
nice.
zero people in there. 2nd of January, full. I was like, and I'm just watching until they all drop off around March in the year, but like just so full of hope and vibrance and new year, new me, and it always amuses me every time. Um,
Yeah, I bet the pessimists are amusing themselves at this time of year.
oh, 100%, 100%. But yes, we are talking about the new year, and sorry to the folks out there. I'll be talking more in this one to save Ryan's voice,
Thank you.
hopefully, as we go through. But do we want to start with a read, watch, play update? What do we start reading in the new year? Reading for me, I haven't done much of the other two, so I'll let you go first on this one.
Yeah, I've got a few things. Just a quick mention as well, because I did actually read and finish three books since last episode. I feel like that's worth at least a mention because I didn't read as much as you. So I did finish The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. I did finish Normal People by Sally Rooney, and I did finish Kokoro by Natsume Soseki. And all three were great. Loved them all. I won't talk too much about them just for my voice, but they were really good. I loved every one of them. I think I'm glad I finally finished The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy because so many people have been telling me to read that for so long. And it was as ridiculous and absurd and amazing and whimsical and silly as everyone says it was. So glad I finally got that one. Normal People, I'll probably be putting a video out about that. Not sure where, probably on the our social somewhere. So I'll do a little review of that one, just because I do have a few thoughts. And then Kokoro was just really, oh, it was a sad book, but it was meaningful. Lots of like themes about like loneliness, isolation, responsibility, family, morals, So it was very, very good. And yeah, can't wait to read more Japanese fiction. So anyway, just thought those were worth a mention because I finally finished some books. But yes, we are starting the new year. So got some new things coming up. And one of those being, and we'll probably talk about it in a minute, Absolution by Jeff Vandermeer, which is our January pick for our buddy read. So I'm reading that. I'm continuing reading Neurotribes by Steve Silberman, which is it's basically a book on the historical, political, social context of autism and how society looks at it. Might be one of the most approachable books on autism that I've ever read, and I haven't finished it yet, so that's saying something. And I'll be starting Norwegian Wood by Haruki Murakami very soon as well. So yeah, super excited about that. And I have playing and have played a game and have been watching something as well. But I'll hand it back over to you because my voice is just like,
All right. I've been waiting for these gaming updates, Ryan. You didn't tell me what you're playing the last time we were texting.
I'll tell you in a minute.
Just need to coat the throat. I feel like I've been a reading machine for the last week. So I have been at home all week. I haven't had to drive into the office. That'll start again next week. So I assume that'll go away. But basically, any spare second I've had, I have been reading. The bug has got me. So I've finished three books so far this year. Two of them were novellas. One is called The Genesis of Change by Olivia J. Elliott, which is a philosophical fantasy novella, and it's very, very thematic. I would argue it could be read as speculative fiction as well, dealing with, so they're called the alchemists. There are three alchemists, and they basically oversee the world and their continuing search of knowledge inside of what they're doing and what they're building. We really do follow two. So we've got Alan and Verge, and one is being sent to observe this medic because the medic showcases something that they've not seen before, where he is able to remove himself from his patients and be consistently calm and collected as these horrific events happen around him. And this alchemist is trying to break this medic to see what the limit is for him to break that line and I guess continue their own knowledge. And it really comes down to knowledge and bias and the boundaries that we put in ourselves. And it's just fantastic. It was definitely like it's 100 pages, and I had to go and stare at a wall for like 10 minutes after I finished it. And it really made me think about my own bias and like my past as a woman, my present as a man, and what my future will hold, and how the biases that we inherently have inside of ourselves shape who we are as people. And I really recommend it if you like a good philosophical sort of mind bend that makes you think for a long time. Like, I'm still so affected by it, even though I finished it, yesterday. I've started two other books since then. Yeah, I needed a minute. And then we'll talk about Absolution once your voice is back with us. And I needed something a little bit fluffy. I needed something that was just action, pure entertainment. So I ended up picking up Ice Station by Matthew Riley, which is just it's an action heavy. We're in Antarctica. They think they've found a spaceship. We've got bunches of different military coming in to find out what's happening and who's going to get control over this thing. And it's wild. It's very
My
action
dad
heavy.
loves that book.
Well, it's pretty good. I blitzed through 100 pages last night.
Nice.
It's
It's
yeah,
just like a
it's
fast-paced read,
it's
right?
a lot of fun. Like, Matthew Riley does know what he's doing and he wrote it when he was 23, which is incredible. Like, the skill in here for a 23-year-old writer is just impeccable. But yeah, I'm really enjoying that. I'll probably finish that this week.
Very good. Nice.
Movies, television, gaming. I've not been doing much of it at all.
That's fair. I'll let you off the hook there. It's been a busy time. Yeah, I've actually so I've been watching a show which I'll talk more of about once I've actually finished it, and it was a recommendation from a friend called Pantheon, and it's an animated series on Netflix, I think, or Prime Video. It's a science fiction story, and it's really about like uploading your people's consciousnesses to a computer, basically, to the net, and the moral ramifications of that, and the corporations that control that, and all of that kind of stuff. It's very, very cyberpunk, very reminiscent of Ghost in the Shell, that kind of stuff. Obviously, I love it because of that, but it's really good, and like for an animated series, it's one of those things that transcends the format that it's in, and a lot of people will dismiss it because it's animated. It's a very, very good, great. It's got like such great themes in it. It's really it really gets quite in depth into those themes. So anyway, I'll talk more about it once I finished it. But it's very good.
I feel like there's quite a few really good animated series out there nowadays. Like, the same argument could be made for Arcane, which is very adult. But I know that if I hadn't watched it with a friend of mine, I probably never would have gone to watch it because it is animated. And like, my own brain's like, cartoon for kids. And now that sort of opened up my world to animation as a medium.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's an area that's getting even more important over time as well. It's interesting because animation has a really rich history, but also like I think it has a really bright future into what we can actually make.
Just like the art styles and the amount of that goes into it is insane. It's so
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, I haven't seen Arcane yet, by the way. That's on my list of. It's like right at the top of my list. I'll probably watch it very soon. And then the other one I wanted to mention is a game which is called Killer Frequency, and I haven't finished this one yet either. It's basically a 3D point and click style, narrative focused mystery adventure puzzly kind of game. It crosses a lot of genres. It's quite recent. I think it was out in 23. Developed and published by Team 17. I think Worms is their big game, if I'm not wrong. Been around a while.
Rachel and Jim play Worms all the time. Like, they
Nice.
downloaded the emulator on the PlayStation, and I just hear incoming all the time, like down the hallway.
Yeah, lots of memories with those games. You basically play as a DJ in a small town in like the 80s.
Oh, I
And
have
so
heard of this
you're
one.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
it's so good. Like you're so you have this little radio booth and you're like, you've got your vinyl that you can spin the vinyl, you can press the buttons, you can do some sound effects and things. All the while there's a serial killer on the loose and you have to sort of take all of these 911 calls because story. I won't spoil it, but the calls are coming into you instead. So you're actually taking them. They're live on air, and then you've got to like direct the people that you're speaking with to safety and to make sure that everyone's okay. And the story in it is just amazing, and I'm having so much fun. It's just really whimsy, and there's lots of like nostalgia of for 80s slasher flicks and things like that. It's actually really good. So I'm having a ton of fun.
Everyone has a side hustle these days. In this economy, you take your 911 calls while you're DJing
Of
tables.
course,
Why
as
not?
you
Why
do.
wouldn't you?
That's it. So yeah, super fun. Recommend it, even though I haven't finished it.
Cool. All right. Well, look, we're going to start off with the big topic today. So the topic is nerding out for the new year. What I want to ask though is, do you have, while we're doing our read what right? What are we doing? The update that we do. Read what and
The
play. Where are we?
list.
Do you have a book, film slash TV show, and game of the year that you would like to showcase for
I do.
2024?
Yes. Yes, I did spend a while thinking about this actually
Mhm.
this morning. I think do you want to go first with yours?
Yeah. Mine is so book wise was a book called The Bloodstones by Tori Tekken. She is a booktuber on the platform as well, and sometimes people are a bit apprehensive about going into tuber works, and I was blown away by how good this book was. So I started it on audio, and the narration is great. Andrew D. Meredith does do a really good narration, but my retention at that point was trash, so I ended up putting it down. I ended up like not for nowing it. I was like, I want to experience this story. It's not happening for me right now, so I'll put it away. I ended up picking it up the next month physically, and I just like flew by the richness of the story. Like, this is a world that feels lived in. You can tell this author has been working on the story and the concepts for like, I think it's like a decade, because it just feels so rich. Like, if I felt like if I asked the author any question about the world, she'd have an answer for me, because she knew what she was doing in the get-go, and I'm very invested in the next book. I think there's an anticipated release video of mine coming out next week where I'm like, I will drop kick my TBR into the sun the second that book arrives, because I'm keen. So yeah, just for a work of fiction in fantasy, just I loved it so much. I thought it'd be more, poignant and philosophical and have like a non-fiction on here that I'd learned something from, but no, it was just a military fantasy that I just love to bits.
Nice.
Um, TV show Yellow Jackets. So I am someone who apparently just loves to be stressed at all times. So when I relax and watch television, it's normally something like high drama. Yellow Jackets is insane, but not out of the realm of possibility, which I think is what makes it so freaky. Is this plane crashes. It's a bunch of kids. It's a soccer team. They're going to a championship. It crashes in the woods, and they have to survive until they get rescued. And we're following their trying to survive. And there's like shit in the woods. Is it supernatural? Is it other people playing tricks on them? We don't know. But then we go down the route of like cannibalism and just I guess the real underpinnings of humanity and what you do to survive. And I love survival stories. And then we have present day, when they're all sort of trying to work through the trauma that they've had to go through while they're trying to lead normal lives. And it's just like the present day, also just insane. Christiana Ricci plays her part so well, and that particular role that she does so well, that I've loved it. And then gaming, I have to go to Chef RPG. I just like, I
Yeah.
loved it, and I played it for like 50 hours, which is more than I tend to play most games. So
Yeah, I think that's dominated most of your
that's,
gaming
yeah,
over the podcast,
it
so
really has.
it's
Yeah.
cool. Nice. Very cool. Yeah, kind of I'm kind of curious, I'm not gonna lie. Maybe one day I'll check it out. I've not seen Yellow Jackets either. It kind of sounds a bit Lord of the Flies-esque, maybe.
Yeah,
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 it's
very
cool.
Lord of the Flies-esque.
Awesome. Do you have any runners up for the stuff you've selected, or just
Probably.
because I couldn't choose, so I've got a few runners up if you don't mind. But if
Yeah,
you
go
can,
for it. Nah, you go.
okay, all right. Early in the year, when I was trying to decide what I was going to read for 24, I was going to read mostly classics, right? That was my plan. So I started the year reading a classic, which was East of Eden by John Steinbeck. It was actually my first book of 2024. the whole year, it still remains my favorite. I think it's the best book I read last year. It was fantastic. I loved it to bits. I think it was completely, it's just such a masterful book. It is one of those books that will stick with you for your whole life, I think. I constantly think about it still, all the time. All the time. And it does this really interesting thing where it does the macro and the micro really well. So you have descriptions of this sprawling landscape, which is like the Salinas Valley in California in America. And you've got like the landscape and how that changes over the seasons and stuff like that. So he does this, really, he zooms out and talks about that in a really descriptive way, and then completely zooms in onto these specific characters and their relationships and stuff. And it's just the way he does this over time as well, because it's over a few different generations, and it's an allegorical story. So it's basically the Cain and Abel story, biblical story, retold, but sort of with a lot of differences over a period of time. But it's just glorious. It's such a masterful work. And it's my first Steinbeck, so I'm really excited to read more. He's got a lot, so I've got a lot to choose from. Quite excited about that.
Is this the one that you were reading over quite a long period of time?
It took me probably a couple of months, I think, maybe even a bit more.
Yeah.
I took it pretty slow, which I'm glad I did, because it was, I think it's worth worth doing that. But yeah, very, very good. But I do have a runners up, and I do want to mention it because I think it's more sort of relevant to typically what we talk about, which is a book of short stories by Ted Chiang called Stories of Your Life and Others. I've never read a collection of short stories that I loved every single one before this one. Every single one was like, it just was so impactful. And one of the stories is actually what one of my favorite films is based on, which is Arrival. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's like
I've not seen it, but I know it. It's got Amy Adams. No. What's her name?
No,
yeah,
no,
Amy
no.
Adams. It is her.
Is it a name? Yeah,
I think so.
know. Yeah, I think you're right. And yeah, anyway, it was, but it's based on this a short story called Story of Your Life, the title story of the book. Fantastic. It's a story about language and communication and relatability, and I loved it. Anytime you have a story about language, I'm in. It's kind of my kryptonite.
Right, it is hard to find a short story collection where you're like, everyone was a banger.
Yeah.
Like, loved it all. Yeah.
100%. I think it was like 8 stories as well. So they're not like, it's not heaps and heaps. It's just enough. But they're fantastic. So highly recommend that one. And then for TV shows, my favorite of the year was True Detective Night Country, which I don't think we've talked about on the podcast before. I've not watched a show in probably years where I was waiting for each episode each week. And like the minute it dropped, I was like watching it.
It's like these days, isn't it?
Right.
Wait for the TV episodes, yeah.
Yeah. And so you often get that experience to be able to do it, but then when you do, most people will just wait and then binge the whole lot anyway. So yeah, I really got to sort of, live with it week after week. True Detective as a series is, season by season is quite different. The first season was very much a season about, there were 2 detectives and they were basically hunting a serial killer, and it gets pretty psychological. And they interview other, serial killers to help them and stuff. But anyway, this is quite a departure from that, and it gets a little bit more paranormal and stuff as well, sort of. But it's very good, and it's got Jodie Foster in it and Carly Reese, and their dynamic is just so good. But yeah, loved it. It was great. It's just such a mystery story, and I was just there for the whole season.
Was the first season Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson? Yeah, because it's a show I'm thinking about.
Yeah, but it's very different from that. So yep, that was good. And then runner-up was Terminator Zero, which I have spoken about before.
Yeah, I've spoken about that one.
Yeah, loved it. I won't say more about it, but it's a really good Terminator entry into the franchise. Cool. And then games, the obvious one would be Dragon Age the Valguard for me.
I thought you were going to come up with something different. I've already got it in my notes. Like, you just said Dragon Age.
I don't think it's a surprise. It's Dragon Age. And I've talked about it, but I do have 2 runners-up because I could not split between the 2. And I think they are more worthy of a mention because they're smaller games.
I feel like you've done the Dragon Age review as well, so let's give some light to something else.
Yes, exactly. So there's 2 games. Neither of them are new. One is Firewatch. So it's an indie game. It's a first-person narrative puzzle kind of adventure game. You'll basically take on the role of a a fire lookout. I guess that's what they called. You just you live up the top of a tower and you're looking out for fires and reporting. But the whole game, you're on the radio with your boss, basically, and it's all about that conversation that you're having back and forth. The actual dialogue and the voice performances are just out of this world. Probably the best I've ever played in a game. And you just get to know the characters and their stories and their backgrounds and more about the landscape and the other characters. It's through conversation the whole time, and it's really beautiful as well. It's like it's like a 3D landscape you get to explore in. But yeah, it's so emotional. Probably one of the most emotional experiences I've had in a game ever. And it's not even very long. It's like 5 hours. It's just really good. So that was one of them, and then the other one I played was Unavowed, which is like a supernatural. It's like another. It's basically a point and click as well, but
Yeah, I've heard of
it's
that
like
one.
yeah, it's a paranormal mystery kind of game. But again, story was just so good. The way it was told, the way it used the mechanics in the game, choice matters quite heavily in that game. So, it affects the ending that you get, and the pixel art is just beautiful as well. I really love the way it looks. So, yeah, both of those.
Piqued my interest. Pixel
Yes.
art.
If you can
Nice.
get past the story side of it, because it is a story game, I think you would love it a lot. And it's not that long. It's longer than Firewatch. It's like 20 hours or so from memory, but I think it's worth it.
Firewatch has just been advertised to me. It looks quite cute, but it is first person, right?
It's
So I think
first person.
that would mess up with like vertigo and just motion
Yeah.
sickness and things like that.
Yeah.
Right, cool. Normally it's me that have the extras for these questions.
I did my homework.
Yeah, you did. Nice, nice. All right, so I did promise Ryan this would be a shorter episode, and we're already at 20 minutes
Told you so.
before we get to the actual topic of the podcast today. But I wanted to talk about the new year and what I mentioned briefly about the turn of events and what happens at the beginning of the new year. But what does it signify to us specifically, and what sort of I guess how do you go about setting up your goal or your theme for the year?
Do you want me to go first, or do you want to
Yeah, you go. I'm still thinking about it.
go? So am I to a point, but at least I have an answer. Um, yeah. So I guess look. So the way I typically do it, not really into resolutions. Don't do those at all ever. But I usually set up a theme for the year. So last year for me was the year of foundations, and it was really just about me sort of setting the foundations, like the actual the building blocks of all the other things that I want to be able to do and focus on in my life. So some of the more obvious ones would be like reading consistently, working out consistently, that kind of thing. So when it comes to reading, though, it was like basically daily reading was like what I was trying to aim for, and I pretty much got there towards the end of the year. So I usually set a theme, and then I have some like outcomes for what I want to achieve, or sort of think of them as like lighthouses or like goalposts, that I'm aiming for. Whereas like the theme is like a North Star that you're aiming for. It's rather than like, I want to read 50 books, like I think that's not my favorite thing to do, because then if you read 49 books and you've technically failed, your goal, but that's silly. That's a silly way to look at it. So I come up with a theme, and then I create some outcomes for myself. So basically, I do those. I think about that over the year. I sort of do a yearly reflection. I do this in a bullet journal. So I'm going through like the yearly ritual where I'm kind of exploring what I did last year, and how that year went, and what I focused on, how I spent my time. And all of this, for anyone interested, is all like Ryder Carroll. He's the creator of the bullet journal system. So it's not like I'm not like spending hours and hours, making doing an art journal or anything. It's just literally just me just writing. But I go through that written reflection, and then I think about what I want to do in the coming year. So yeah, so that's where I come up with that theme. And then some outcomes which we can talk about in a minute too. But that's kind of how I approach it. How about yourself?
I used to do the New Year's resolution thing, but it would all be like that arbitrary. I want to lose weight. I want to eat better. Like I want to whatever it is, and then because whatever that thing was just wasn't sustainable, or I just never stuck to it, I started going down that theme route as well. And this came from early in transition, probably even before I started medically transitioning, was I consumed a lot of content from FTM people, and one of them was Coach Cody, and he talks about the theme, like the yearly theme. So I was like, that sounds like a cool idea, and he would just give it a word, and he's like, this is the word, and then here are all the little things that build up to this word. I am so averse to any sort of like goal apps, writing them down for someone who loves lists to plan out what I'm doing. I cannot stand them. I downloaded a
Yeah.
goal app because there's like two that I wanted to like sort of do this year underneath my theme. I was like, fuck this. Like the second I had it installed and I started like putting it down, I was like, no, that's not happening. So yeah, these days I just tend to go, here are a theme. And so I picked three for this year and we'll talk about our themes in a sec. Um, and then I just stick to that. And well, it doesn't always work, does it? Because we're human. Like, it ebbs and flows as we go through our lives. But those are I guess, the core themes that I aim to come back to. And like, those are the things that I'll think about when, if find myself straying, I'm like, okay, well, what did I want to get out of this year? What are my themes and how do I get back to them? Last year for Rachel and I, it was all about change. We were doing this scary thing. We were traveling cross country to do something for us. And the intention behind that was to really get out of our comfort zone and see what we were doing. And part of that was healing. So that was a second theme to, what are some of the things that we hadn't done that we wanted to do? What was stopping us now that we don't have that? Are we able to now go and do that thing? Which is how Bart and Butter really got off the ground, which has been great. But yeah, very similar themes. No bullet journals
Yeah.
for Kris though.
That's fine. Yeah, I think how you do it is really that's the personal part. But I think I do endorse the whole theme system. The idea of the theme system, the way that I came across it was actually in a podcast. It's the Cortex podcast with Gray and Mike, and it's one of the podcasts I've been listening to since the beginning. And they've got their own like journal that they sell and stuff. But you don't need any of that. You can just do the actual system itself. And yeah, that's kind of how I came across it. So very similar, but I do endorse the whole like the word as a theme or come up with a name because I think it helps you sort of align with where you want your year to go.
I guess getting older as well. The whole theme has
Yeah.
really changed, and it's just able to come back and center yourself, which has been interesting. So, what are your goals or your themes for the year?
Yeah. So last year was year of foundations, right? So setting those building blocks. So this year I wanted something that sort of related to that I could use as a way forward for some of the goals that I had this year. And so I've called it the year of next steps. And it's really just taking those things. So I have like a few key areas. I kind of do. This is where I'm going to get kind of nerdy, but I kind of do this whole areas and projects thing by this a guy called Tiago Forte, and he has like a whole system. But he's created this thing called Para, which is like projects, areas, resources, and archive. So like it's the way you sort of deal with all like your digital notes and stuff. And so I've been doing that. So I have like my projects and my areas that I can always see on like all of my like my phone and my bullet journal and stuff. So I always know kind of my key areas in my life. So I kind of have like a goal for each of the key areas. But the ones that kind of relate to this podcast at least are for reading. So I kind of just want to engage more with what I'm reading. So a lot of people will have like a numbers goal for books or whatever, and I've put it's meaningless, but I've put a like a numbers goal for my books on like Goodreads and Storygraph now as well. I've set it to 50, but that is meaningless. Like it's just something so I can sort of see how I'm progressing with their like stats. But what I really want to do in my actual goal for reading is to engage more with what I'm reading, and that means sort of writing around what I'm reading. I want to start a commonplace book for my reading as well, so I can actually just sort of have a collection. I've got like a digital note taking system for it, but I want to have something that I'm looking at more and engaging with more. So that I can remember. The goal really is to remember more what I read, so I can actually, when we have a conversation and we're talking about books or whatever, I can relate that to something else that I've read, and it's more front of mind for me. So that's my sort of reading goal, and then the other big one for me will be writing. So once we get back from Japan in March, so we'll be back around April. It's basically going to be pedal to the metal for me for writing. It's time to start that again, or to restart that again, to build up those muscles again. And the way I'm going to do that is through short stories. So I want to really start writing consistently, and hopefully publish something. Publish one of my short fiction in some sort of publication, somewhere, some magazine, something. That's the goal. It's a lighthouse that I'm aiming towards. It's not like if I don't do it, that's okay as well. It's really just something for me to aim towards. So yeah, and then obviously the podcast ones, and we'll talk about that more in a minute. Oh, and one other area as well, which is more just like art and creativity. I just want to be immersed more in any kind of art form, just to make time rather than wait for time to appear. I want to make more time for, like, watching films, because that was abysmal for me last year. Like I probably watched maybe, I could probably count on one hand how many films I watched
I
last year,
reckon
and
I'm the
that's terrible.
same.
Yeah.
Although I did travel a lot last year, so like I would watch two movies every time I went to Sydney. Like
Right.
two movies there, two movies back, and that just like that was most of
That
my
was it.
movie watching.
Yeah.
Although we do like a shit movie Friday night here when Jim's home, so we'll watch
Nice.
it's normally shark movies. I'm not gonna lie, like the amount of sharks on the top of that.
On theme.
I've got a new shark which you can't see, but it's on this shelf. I've got a hammerhead for Christmas. Um,
Nice.
but I think we've run out of shark movies, so I don't know what's
Oh
next.
no.
Terrible state of
Nice.
affairs. I still haven't watched Jaws because I refuse.
Oh wow. Okay, but you got the
I'm
book.
I'm so scared. Yeah, I spent $145 on the book from the Folio Society,
Wow.
but
That's a great movie. Fantastic film.
I'll watch it. Maybe that's my New Year's resolution. Watch Jaws.
Watch Jaws. Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, I love that whole Friday night shit movie. Yeah, I should do that, because you'll probably watch a ton just by doing that, right? But yeah, anyway, so they're my goals. So I think that's doable, especially for films, because like films, it's funny, right? Like I don't watch movies very often, but like they're so short in comparison to playing a game or reading a book.
I've been
So I
watching
have
a
no
TV
excuse.
show where you've got
Yeah,
20 episodes, like 45 minutes each.
that's it. So I think that's doable. But yeah, all of that to summarize is really just engaging more and surrounding myself more with everything, all kinds of art forms completely, and just yeah, immersing myself in that. How about yourself?
So my themes for the year are celebrating the small wins. So for me, I think the last couple of years, I have just seen so much joy in very little mundane things in the world. And I think we put a lot of stock in big goals and we forget that every step on that journey is something to be celebrated. So I want to focus on not only the bigger goals that I have, but also really making sure that I'm paying attention to something that makes me smile every day, even on the shittiest day of the year, because we all go through it. We all have days where we're not feeling it. But for example, it can be something as small as I went for a walk this morning and I got to see the ocean because I live so close to it. And like that made me smile because it's just a very calming presence. Or I got home and Rachel's on the couch and I thought she looked really cute. I was like, it doesn't matter what it is. It's just find something to smile about every day. There is so much misery in the world and we live in times of uncertainty. And I feel like as millennials, that's just our current state of being, that we forget that we're allowed to be happy at very, very small things.
Absolutely.
And I want to bring that joy back. The other one is intent, to think about the things that I'm doing. Why am I doing them? Am I following the intent? And that comes a lot. Well, that plays into my channel. It plays into this podcast. It's fundamentally, why am I doing this? Why am I writing that book? It's for me. Do I care if it makes money? No, because I'm not doing it for money. I'm doing it for myself. The channel, I don't want to chase subscriber goals. I don't care. Like, I'm doing it for me. I'm doing it because it makes me happy, making sure that that intent is there and that it remains that way. And the third one that I have is unconscious bias. And that, before I even read that novella, it's just sort of, I guess, spearheaded that's the direction that I want to go in. And that is making sure I'm being open to experiences that aren't my own and to challenge myself on the biases that I hold to make space for other people.
That's a great goal to have, and I mean, look, everyone should have that goal, but it's good to to put that in words and to think about that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's something I've been thinking about for a while as I've read different novellas and things like that. And we do have a topic which we'll talk about this year, hopefully about novellas. But just seeing the world around me change, particularly moving to another state and even thinking about my parents to an extent, doing the best that they can with the tools that they had, and just being aware that not everyone is going to fit into your worldview, and it's important to not discredit those experiences.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And like noticing things, small things, like that is basically a practice of gratitude, and it's something I do in my bullet journal as well. And I think it's really important. It's just such a simple thing that you can do that has absolutely big repercussions on how you view the world. Yeah, I recommend that to everyone as well. I think that's a great practice.
I have some, friends who are quite negatively geared a lot, and I think it's really spurred from seeing that, being like, okay, but find something. It doesn't
Mhm.
matter what it is. When you feel like there is nothing out there that can give you joy, you need to find something because
Yep.
otherwise you'll just suffer in a pit of despair and it's not worth it.
Yeah, yeah, and you keep going like when you're surrounded by negativity, like that feeds more negativity, and you go down these spirals. It's very easy, I'm sure we've all been there. So yeah, I think it's even more important if you're that way inclined to have something that you are actively looking for that's positive in your life, and it can be anything. But yeah, it can make such a big difference.
All right, so I know we've spoken like briefly about the yearly goal and themes, but I have a note on our episode notes to talk about our wish list or our intents for our personal hobbies throughout 2025. What do we talk about? Read, watch, and play.
Yeah,
You've
yeah,
spoken
I'll do that.
briefly about movies and reading, but what about gaming?
Yes. So yeah. So I touched on it before with the watching one film a week. So that's my goal. Again, it's a lighthouse I'm aiming towards. That's just something to to think about. So that's for films. For games though, it's mostly to play one at a time.
Yeah, that's a good goal.
Yeah, I really need to because there's so many. Like my backlog is stupid at this point. I'm probably never going to, just like books, right? I'm probably never going to get through these games because they take a lot longer in a lot of cases as well.
You also play like real story heavy games too,
Yeah.
so they tend to be quite big.
Exactly, all the RPGs. So yeah, I really just need to focus on one at a time. And and a lot of them, like I'm actually getting a lot into smaller indie games as well. So those are a lot shorter, and you can sort of tackle those. So yeah, so right now it's Killer Frequency, and I'll play that until I'm finished, and I'll move on to something else. So we'll see how that goes, but that's something I'm aiming for.
How did the Steam sale go for you?
Do you really want to know
Yeah,
the
I
answer to
do.
that question?
I want to know publicly.
Oh, great! Put me on the spot, why don't you? Um, I probably picked up. I didn't count them. I probably picked up about 20 or so.
Sorry.
Yeah, but they're all games that have been on my wish list for forever, and they were all on sale. And I'm just like, well, if you're going to play these little indie games, because all of them are small indie
Right.
games mostly, mostly like pixel art or point and click or whatever, and maybe like 10 hours or less, sometimes 5 hours or less. So I'm just like, you know what, let's just do it. And sometimes that can act as kind of like a catalyst for getting into the rhythm of playing and finishing games. At least that was the intention. So we'll see. We'll see.
I think,
How about you?
well, I got a Switch for Christmas. My housemate got sick of my old Switch
Nice.
that was struggling and bought me a new OLED for Christmas, which is very nice and unnecessary. But I went on to the Nintendo. I was so good with the Switch sale. I was like, yeah, look, I have like 20 games that I haven't played yet. Got a new Switch. I was like, all right, Nintendo eStore. What are we looking at? And I ended up picking up Dave the Diver, which I
Oh,
have
nice.
played on Steam before. I really enjoyed it. I like wet myself the first time a shark came on the screen, so I don't like as much as I love sharks, I never want to see one.
Yeah, you have this
Like up
love-hate
close, I
relationship with
really do.
sharks.
Um, and you have to like it. You run a sushi restaurant, so you need to go and get fresh produce for or fresh animal products for. It's not a game for vegans, because you're in there with a harpoon gun and you've got to get like this shark head. And I was like, I have to get this shark to progress this story. Anyway, I bought it on Switch. And I bought a few
Amazing.
other things. Rachel and I started playing Core Keeper together, which
Yeah.
is it's another pixel art game. There's real no rhyme or reason to it. You jump in with a team and you figure it out as you go. Like you make bases. It's very Terraria, Minecrafty esque.
Oh, this is the
Where
one you've told me about. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then yeah, we had a good go of that. I think we'll play more. It's definitely one you want to play with friends. Like if I was playing it by myself, I'd just be bored. But yeah, I bought probably four or five on the
Nice.
Nintendo store. Um,
Probably more sensible than I, so good job.
is it more sensible if I've already played them? I've just rebought them.
Good. Fair point. Fair
Yes.
point. I take that back.
Um, cool. I mean, my wish list for my personal hobbies is just comes back to that intent. Be intentional about what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I put a goals video up on my my booktube a little while ago, and big thing for me with reading is to step back from such a big reading goal. And it's not that I plan to read any less. I average about 80 to 90 books per year, and I have for the last couple of years. I expect to fall in that realm again just because of how I read and it being the
Yeah.
most dominant hobby in my life. But I've pulled it back to 60, and the reason for that is I found myself mood reading a lot more. And the way that I was structuring my TBRs and my reads did not allow for mood reading. So I ended up starting to rebel against TBRs. And like, it wasn't an active thing that I was looking at doing. It's just like, I don't want to read anything that I told myself I'm going to be reading. So I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
But I also have a backlog of review copies. And I don't
Mhm.
want to leave authors waiting forever. I've closed myself off to review copies until I've gone through their backlog. So being very intentional about making sure that I have 24, there are 12 months in the year, two per month, very attainable goal. Reading one new thing a month, so very conscious that I've put 12 series on things I want to start. One of those needs to be started every month or it's not going to happen. And just the other two being continuations. And that should give me room for alpha reads, beta reads. I'm now being paid to alpha read, which means I'm selling a product to authors, which means it's not just something I'm doing to help them out anymore. I am, but I'm also getting paid for it. So that product needs to be what I want to showcase to that author, which means it's going to take more time. Beta reading I can sort of fit in between, but it just gives me a little bit more freedom to do that. TV and films and stuff, I don't really have any goals around those. I think for me, it's watching what I actually want to watch rather than
Mhm.
just letting somebody else dictate what we're watching. If I don't have interest in it, I don't want to spend my time doing it. And again, that
Yeah.
comes down to intent for me. And gaming, it's about writing game reviews for indie games. So
Oh, nice. Of
part
course.
of Before We Go blog, we don't really. There's one guy, CT Phipps, who's an author who does do some game reviews. But it's a market that we're not currently tapping into. And I play a lot of indie games and a lot of SFF and horror indie games as well. So my idea behind that is to play 10 hours of a game for like an initial review, but I need to get to that 10-hour mark to be able to give a solid, unless the game is shorter than 10 hours. So I've got I Am Future, which I will do a review for. I've just gotten the screenshots and stuff for that. But also do 2 reviews a month. One book, like one standout book, and if I get a game, great. If I don't, it'll be a second book. And just making sure it's sustainable.
Yeah, cool. When do you fit gaming into your life? Like when do you typically game?
Because I don't game in like big sessions, it's easier for me. So,
Mhm.
if you, how I roster my days. So if I'm thinking of playing a game, if I'm doing it for review, so for like I Am Future, for example, I would come home from work, I get home about 5:30, make dinner, and then I don't tend to do book stuff when I've been in the office just because I'm quite fatigued when I get back. So I'll schedule myself in between 8 and 9 and I'll play for an hour. And then at 9 o'clock, I'll stop and I'll start getting ready for bed. And that might mean reading in bed for half an hour or whatever
Yeah.
that looks like. But yeah, I'll tend to schedule in the time. There have been a couple of times this year with little games like Chef RPG, I Am Future did it as well, where on my day off, I probably played 4 or 5 hours, which is
Mhm.
relatively unheard of for me. I don't do that sitting like there for 4 hours. I will play an hour or two, go and do something else, come back and sit down and play it
Yeah,
again.
in short bursts.
Um,
Yeah, we're complete opposites for that because I don't really play games every day anymore. Not that I ever really did. I kind of always did it in like big chunks. So it will be like my day off. That's what I'm doing, And it won't be in short bursts. It'll be well, sort of, but mostly it'll be like for 4 or 5 hours.
I got Rachel from an 8 hour Valguard stint last night
Yeah.
and put her into bed at like 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. Well.
Selfishly, because I couldn't sleep. I was like, I can't sleep. I need your presence. Uh, so if you could
Nice.
stop this, that'd be great.
Yeah. Give me attention, please.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Yeah. I think that's some good goals. Some good wish lists rather than goals, I suppose.
Which brings us to the last thing that we're going to talk about today. Just to I guess, tie off our
Hmm.
goals and our New Year's and whatnot is what do we want for the podcast? So I asked Ryan and I had to think about it as well. What are some wish list items that we want for Genre Blender in 2025? I know what mine are. I'm curious to see whether we match or we align in these. I've
Yeah.
got two. So
Okay,
you go.
I got a few more, but yeah,
Okay.
we didn't really talk about these, so all
No,
of
we
this is
haven't.
just like
This
what
is
we
live.
both
We,
individually think,
yeah.
yeah, which is just more fun. I have a feeling they'll align, though, to be honest. Um, so I guess I didn't write this one down, but just like top of mind for me is just to continue having fun, because this is meant to be for fun. It is fun. I look forward to this every fortnight, as I think you do as well. And without that, it wouldn't be what it is. And so, like, nothing else really matters when it comes down to it. Like, all of the other stuff that's on my list doesn't really matter. What matters is that we do this because it's fun. So I guess I didn't write that, but I guess that's number one for me. Um, but in a more like I don't know, numbers, gearing towards numbers, or like, the future of what this is. I would like us to grow the listenership or the viewership more. I think that is a goal that, although it's not something that really matters, is, I think, having the back and forth um, from other people's input, like, to determine what we not necessarily determine what we talk about, but to, I guess, give us some ideas. That back and forth nature of a conversation, I think, would be useful. So that's one for me. Do you want to go back and forth? I don't want to like ramble.
Yeah, I feel like the two I have are going to be in your list anyway, so I'm gonna
Yeah, go for it.
take one. Big one for me is I really remove myself from numbers. I'm not gonna lie. Like I don't want to. I want to be consistent with what we're doing in terms of social media. So I did my first TikTok.
You did.
I
It
did. I recorded and I
was good too.
uploaded a TikTok under the Genre Blender account. You can go ahead and check it out. It's very embarrassing for me. I've got to look at the camera. But at that point, I'd recorded it 3 times and I wasn't doing it again.
I've been there, done that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Trying to do a review in 60 seconds, even for a novella, was so hard. And like, that's what I want to work on is 60-second uh, reviews for trad pub books. Since we tend to talk more trad pub over here, I don't talk about trad pub a lot on my channel, so this might be an outlet for that. So for me, I would like to, I guess, partner my intent behind my booktube channel and then have something that's different but the same over with Genre Blender, and make sure that I'm finding a balance between the two. That was a third one. That's not in my list. My
Nice.
list.
In pure genre blender fashion, where we just make up stuff and
Just
go on
here's a
tangents.
tangent.
Yep.
More
No, that's
tangents.
a good one.
2025.
Yeah, 100%. That's definitely top of the list. Yeah. No, that's a good one. I think that's great to have that sort of like that separation, but also alignment with what your interests are, and that makes a lot of sense. Just like logically speaking, I think that's great. Another one on my list. I'm curious if it's on yours, but to do some guest episodes. I
Yeah,
think bringing more
100%.
people in. Yep. That would be nice. Like, it's not something we haven't like actively spoken about. It is something that we both wanted to do since the beginning anyway. Not that that's ever going to be the focus. I think these conversations and just our back and forth is the most, what this will always be at its heart. But of course, you have a lot of contacts for authors, writers, people in that kind of domain, and I think that's going to be a great way to highlight them, spotlight them,
Yeah, 100%.
and get their insights.
I want to be again intentional and sorry, I'm repeating myself about the guests. Like I definitely want guests on the podcast, and they'd be fun to get some different insights. But I want to be challenged by our guests as well. Maybe bring in some perspectives that we haven't thought about. So, for example, I've got someone who's an expert in fan fiction, and we have an episode of fan fiction, and I
It's
would love to bring that person in just to really like. I used to think it was such nonsense. But having someone who's actively studied and done is doing a PhD essentially in fan fiction, I was like, come and challenge me. Like, how
nice.
fun would that be to do
Yeah.
live?
Yeah, I'm there for that. Absolutely. And similarly, I've got a buddy who I've kind of semi asked them, but not properly. So if they watch this, they'll get a surprise, I suppose. But who they actually watched, I think, over 300 and something films. Like, not, it would have been more than that actually, because it was like
Almost one a
one
day.
each day. Yeah, one a day. So it would have been
Damn.
over 365. Yeah. Anyway, so they've watched a lot of films and they continue to, and I think that would be a good conversation to have as someone who doesn't watch many at all. Both of us. So yeah, that'd be cool.
That's going to be a debate episode for sure.
Maybe, yeah.
Who did it better? We could revisit the adaptations.
Nice. Nice. Yes.
So, one that Ryan and I have talked about very briefly that I would love to bring to this platform, again, it's not something I do on my own platform, is a Genre Blender After Dark segment where it is
I love this so
just,
much.
it is geared more negatively in like a fun, jovial way. It's not, we're not here to like shit on anyone's dreams, but maybe some topics that are a bit more spicy and usually coupled by a glass of whiskey. and
That's the
just
important
having
part.
having a mad chat about something that just grinds our gears the wrong way and hopefully having fun with it.
Yeah, a little bit more ranty, that kind of thing. Stuff that we wouldn't want to put on like the main section of the show, but it's fun to do that. I think to kind of like we all have these opinions and like I think maybe some of the episodes that we did, like the one we were talking about classic versus indie and self-published fiction, and there were some things in there that I said that are probably a little bit contentious, and that's fine, but like that kind of stuff I think has its place as long as the context is understood by everyone. Yeah.
I don't know what
Cool.
it looks like yet, but like I'm thinking just like maybe Patreon can have access to that first. We'll see. We'll talk about
Yeah.
it. But yeah, just Ryan and I being bitches.
Love a good bitch session.
Yeah, it'd be
Bitch
great.
session. I've had some whiskey
Just
today.
to give it, just to give it context, I think the first one off the first cab off the rank is talking about the Becky Chambers series that we both like
Yes.
started liking, but then ended up hating.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I've got lots of strong opinions about that one, and that one's been on our list since literally before we started the
Yeah,
podcast. So that's that one needs to happen. And another one, just to mention it, and then we'll obviously talk about this one down the track, but more to do with like the author, the art versus the artist,
oh
and some of
yeah.
the strong opinions about that. So there's a lot there.
Wait, look, as I get older, my care factor has really gone downhill
Yeah,
on
same.
that. But that may be an After Dark episode that goes all like for 3 hours. The
Could
amount
be.
that we talk about this just off the podcast,
Yep, lots of whiskeys for that one.
it just like deteriorates into nonsense.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Probably very very likely at this point. Love it.
That's it. That's all I've
Yeah.
got.
That's
Those
it.
are
I
the two
mean,
things.
the only other things that were on my list was like more buddy reads, which we kind
Oh
of
yeah,
are doing
for
already,
sure.
and
Yeah.
to do that consistently, and I did write more writing themed episodes just because I think that will be a focus for me a bit more next year or this year, and for you as well with your next ones coming out. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah, cool. I mean, the buddy read thing is also why I took my reading goal down so that I actually had room, like per month or per bi-monthly or whatever we do.
Yeah.
At the moment, it's Ryan and I talking about Jeff Vandermeer, but hopefully in the future we get more people coming on. And I'd like to be challenged in those reads as well. I think we both gear ourselves towards thematic reads. It's the one area that we agree on.
Yeah, that's true.
Is theme based reads, so that'll be interesting. We'd love to get more of you in the Patreon. So at the moment the Patreon it's free and you get access to the Discord, which is where I'll be talking about our buddy reads.
Mhm.
Right, so that is us. That is what we, I guess, did last year, what we're looking at doing this year in our lives and for the podcast. Anything that you're excited about, please go ahead and make sure you tell us in the comments down below. It'd be good to get some more people talking down there. And if you have questions for us, go ahead and ask it because we can base whole episodes on things that you want to see.
Yes. Oh, speaking of one thing I feel sorry, the tangent. Of
Of
course, it's a
course.
tangent. Q&A episode. So eventually, once we have some questions and things, that would be a fun one to do as well. So if you do have questions, yeah, please do let us know what those are.
They can be very pointed. Ryan and I are not scared. I'm a little
Yeah,
bit scared, but take it back already.
it'll be an AMAA. Ask us almost anything.
What's
Yeah.
gone? That's fine. All right, so that is us for today. To watch the video of the podcast, you can head on over to Genre Blender Podcast on YouTube and Spotify. They also have a video version over there. The audio version is available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, whichever one you want to go ahead and choose, and you'll find all the show notes in the description box down below. So anything that was spoken about, film, TV, games, books, it's all down there for you. For access to our book discussions and community first updates, please consider joining our free tier over on Patreon. The link for that will also be down below, and you can follow Genre Blender Podcast on Instagram and TikTok for clips of the show, me just doing random reviews, which apparently is now a thing, or you can visit genreblenderpodcast.com for all of our social media links across the web. You can find me over at A Fictional Escapist on YouTube and Instagram and Blue Sky and X, all the places, and you can find Ryan at ryan.floyd on Instagram or ryanfloyd.com for anything else.
Nice. Mine's a lot shorter. It's just
You
social media right
bastard!
now.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just what a mess it is, though, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, to all the world hoppers out there, we wish you safe travels, and we'll catch you in the next episode, which will be all about how sensory issues affect how we consume stories. So a little bit of a departure there, but also still on brand. And yeah, that'll be an interesting conversation, which I'm very much looking forward to.
That'll be a good one. All right.
Nice. Until then, though, take care, and we'll see you
Ciao.
next time.
Bye.